If you've been active, watching Invincible, watching it on YouTube sometimes, looking at what the community's talking about, then you'll know that there's been some very vocal, should I say, critics. Though I think that's giving them a little too much credit. There's people who say the animation quality of Invincible is very poor, things like that. I'm sure you've all heard about them. And chances are you've already seen rebuttal videos and other general cases of people calling them out for basically being stupid. Well, this probably isn't going to be too much different, but I felt like I needed to make the video anyways just to get some thoughts off my chest and maybe I'll end up saying something that somebody else hasn't said yet, or maybe you haven't seen this kind of video yet, in which case you're in luck. I'm in luck. Let's get it straight into it. First of all, there are, in fact, some scenes where the animation is, it has mistakes or they cut corners. And they admit themselves that they have to cut corners. I mean, the team is pretty small. It's like 4 animators. Who knows how many people actually putting it all together, doing the storyboarding. And if I'm being honest, I haven't noticed any of these mistakes myself when I'm watching the show. Like, if I'm really looking out for it, maybe I'll see something like the things that they mention in this one-off scene, where they say things like, oh, they'll hide the mouth so they don't have to animate them talking. But I've never really been put out of the show, have my immersion ruined because they cut a corner or they had to do something different with the animation that might not appeal to most people. And I have put some examples on the screen here. Bottom left is the most obvious. They mirrored Conquest to save some time, and they ended up making a little mistake there. And I didn't even notice this. Then there's a scene in season 2 where Omni-Man is flying through space, and it's basically just a PNG. Honestly, I didn't even notice. I don't care because I think it set the tone fairly well. And then there's also someone complaining, or some people complaining really, about Immortal looking like a PNG when he's floating away from Alan and towards the Earth. I didn't really care about that one either. And honestly, what were they supposed to do? What's the point in putting some detail in like a 3-second animation of him basically floating towards the Earth? Like, there's no real reason for him to articulate much there unless he was going to speed up or something. And I think it did a very good job showing his personality, that he was moving slowly, he was just defeated, he was not in a good state, but he wasn't getting angry. Like, we've seen other characters like Omni-Man, when he gets mad and he flies away, he moves very quickly. But Immortal here was just done with everything. So I think the PNG was okay. There's also something else. Yes, there was the trailer for season 3, and as well as the first episode of season 3, where they showed the clip of, or well, the scene of Cecil talking about how much Invincible has improved because he's been putting him through a training program. And they showed him lifting the giant weights, which kind of reminded me of how in some media with Superman, they actually make him like a giant, unusual weightlifting machine just so he can show off his ability to lift that much weight. And also because you can't exactly put that much weight on a barbell, you got to do some crazy things with your technology to do it. So I think that was a good callback to other superhero films, and specifically Superman, because the creators of this show they've been listening to their community, and I'm sure they've heard all of the comparisons between Omni-Man and Superman. So I wouldn't doubt it if that was why they put the special machine there. I don't know if that was in the comics. I haven't personally read the comics myself. Maybe it's a show only thing. I haven't heard any talk about that, and I'm going to get to the comics later. I haven't read them, but I have some things I want to talk about with them later in the video. Alright, future me, because I forgot to put some things in the video. First of all, power scaling. I wanted to elaborate on this a little bit, because I just read a thread literally just now talking about why is Invincible getting beaten up, and they say holding back isn't a valid excuse. Honestly, I disagree. First of all, just because the Viltrumites are strong doesn't mean they're untouchable. They're not like Superman, where you cannot scratch them by any means. They've taken damage before, and it might be negligible, but if you let yourself keep getting hit, it adds up. Also, we've seen Mark bounce back from all these injuries. It just looks a lot worse than it actually is. But you also have to keep in mind that if Mark was literally not taking any damage throughout the entire show, what there would be no stakes, no tension, no nothing. They got to make some kind of threat that isn't completely world-ending but can damage him. And of course, also if you put the Viltrumites completely on a level of their own, and then what's the point in having anybody except Mark get involved at all? Like Adam Eve versus Conquest. Yeah, she didn't do too much, but she did something. As for why I think that holding back point is actually quite valid, the reason that Invincible holds back so much to the point that he's basically getting himself killed is because he is absolutely terrified of being his father. And I understand that because, like, in the show, we see what Omni-Man does. And at any point, Invincible could become like that if he let his morals slip. And he's not just, worried about now or a week from now or a month from now. He's going to be alive for thousands of years. And he cannot by any means allow himself to lose himself to that mentality. And that terrifies him. So it's an interesting moral struggle that he's got going on. And he is also still really young. He's like 19 in the show. So he's going to make some mistakes. And he's not going to be thinking straight all the time. He hasn't even gotten his whole life figured out yet, so come on, give the character a break. Anyway, I also think that some of the villain writing was a little weird, and yeah, I'll admit that. Like, they wrote angst from having all these terrible things happen to him, and he blames our Invincible and not the other Invincibles. And, Powerplex being the same way, like, this is all your fault, Invincible. Come on. And I also mentioned that I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about the comics. Specifically, everybody keeps spoiling them, such as what Anissa did. Now everybody on the internet knows, huge spoiler, and I feel like they're going to have to completely change it in the show now because otherwise everybody already knows what's going to happen. Like, not even to the point, like, oh, I read the comics, I know what's going to happen. It's, you let everybody know what's going to happen. Even the show onlys know now. And it's not really fair. Anyway, back to the video. But some people complained that, it was done with CGI, and it was a little goofy. And yeah, I do have to admit that that did take me out a little bit. It looked a little bit silly. That was like the one point in the show where I think the animation or CGI was a little rough around the edges. It was a little too smooth compared to the rest of the show. And by that I mean, when you're doing animation, it's going to be around like 24, 30 frames per second. And when you actually do take it up to like 60 frames per second, you make it super smooth. It doesn't necessarily look better unless everything fits together. So of course, when it was looking super smooth and moving like that, it was a little weird. But there were some people in the comments, being a little passive aggressive, being like, "Man, you could have animated it a little better than that." And I'm not bothered by people making jokes, and it's okay to point these things out because they do need feedback. And it's good to give them some good criticism like that. But there's also been some people who have been very vehement. I'm sure you've seen a video or two talking about this, but they've been saying that it's utter trash and it's basically unwatchable because of how bad it is. And I strongly disagree. I actually really, really like this art style that Invincible has. It's not like Jujutsu Kaisen animation where it's like super insane, well done, but it's a style and it stays consistent. And so for that reason, it stays immersive. And I'm fine with it looking the way it does. I mean, I've seen worse because I put in here a video about the animators doing this joke. It was in the comics, this much I know. In the comics, they joked about how they save time when drawing and writing the comics. Like they would reuse artwork, and they show different panels where they reuse the same exact image just to make it very, very obvious. And it's that exact scene that has me looking in animation for scenes where they take these, corner cutting measures. And I don't know if I want to call it cutting corners because objectively they are cutting corners. But also objectively they have to do that because otherwise they don't have enough, time or budget. And as some other people have said, they don't want to wait 4 years for the next season because animation takes a long time. So I'm just going to put the next slide up now.
Philip Schaff, oh man, I'm a huge fan.
Thanks, buddy. Means a lot.
I gotta ask, when's the new season of Seance Dog coming out?
You mean the show? Probably not for another year. Sorry, animation takes a long time.
Oh, I can't imagine how much work it must be for those fight scenes.
Yeah, those take a while, but we cut corners in other places to make it manageable. You ever notice that sometimes whoever's speaking has their mouth off camera so you never see their lips moving?
Huh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, or we'll cut to the back of someone's head while they're talking for the same reason. Other times we'll do a wide shot and slowly pan across it. It looks like it's animated, but it's so far away, you don't notice nothing's moving. The best part is, because all these scenes have limited animation, we can make the drawings even better. But sometimes the artists get carried away and it kind of looks like a different show. It's crazy what you can get away with. Thanks for coming by.
And I think this scene was at a very good explanation of, it takes a long time, and sometimes you got to cut some corners, and these are some ways to do that unobtrusively. But you're also going to end up in situations where it's going to be a little more obtrusive. And yeah, I can understand why that could be jarring for some people who have more attention to detail, and they may be expected a little bit more. However, as I stated earlier, the team is very small, and I believe if they hired more workers, more animators, yes, it would cost more money, but I think the show is bringing enough income as it is. It is very popular. I think they could afford to get some more animators in and really do some things. And I don't think they're lazy or they're not, using their full potential or anything. They absolutely proved that they could. Now, I would like to point out that Invincible is not the only show that is guilty of things like this. Attack on Titan is probably my favorite anime of all time. Attack on Titan is just so grounded, so mature, and there's so much you can think about with it. It hits all the right nerves, But even it isn't perfect. There's some scenes that are very obviously CGI and are not very good. But you gotta understand, even with a massive studio like MAPPA, and with all the resources and employees that they have at their disposal, it takes a lot of time and money to do these things. And yes, I understand that the bottom left corner is from Studio Wit, not MAPPA. But the top right corner is from Season 4 MAPPA. But yeah, you can see that the CGI and whatnot, it isn't very good. And unlike Invincible, where it's like a brief thing, it's on the screen for maybe 3 seconds. In Attack on Titan, it was much more egregious. You would see Titans being made in CGI, and they'd be on the screen for minutes at a time. And it was honestly kind of jarring. Like, it took me out of it a little bit. Like, I couldn't help but chuckle at how bad it was. Granted, the cinematography and the story writing is so amazing that I can't even be mad at them. As I've said, it takes time, money, and everything. And I gotta let them have some slack once in a while. Like, this is an insane amount of work that they're putting into it. I think they deserve a break from now and then. And yes, there's also been some complaints about the story. Granted, these are a lot quieter because especially in later seasons, they fixed a lot of plot holes. It was just like earlier on because Amanda was insufferable and didn't really make much sense. Like, oh, you're a superhero and you have to save the world. Too bad. But there's also some inconsistencies in the scaling, or at least there were. With, like, as here Base Talks has pointed out, it doesn't make that much sense that Red Rush, which it would be caught by Omni-Man unless he was being really stupid. And that is, it is a kind of a problem because he had to die, but his powers were also kind of a direct counter to anything that Omni-Man could do. So they kind of writ themselves into a corner, but there's only so much you can do. And especially, early on, I assume they didn't have as many resources and, writing ability or experience. As you can especially tell later on, they're getting a lot better. And the story has definitely gotten better, animation has gotten better. They've been improving overall. And I imagine as time goes on, they're going to continue to prove themselves. And especially speaking of proving themselves, the fight with Conquest. The scene was exactly what people wanted from the show. Okay, here's one scene, one fight scene, and it's going to demolish, all the fraud allegations. And I don't have any screen caps or videos of it. I'm not going to spoil it, per se. But I would like to say the animation in this fight scene, absolutely incredible. It's very obvious that they saved a lot of their time and resources for this very scene. And in case you've seen it, then you'll know things like when Oliver shows up and he does that slide and it's just so well animated. And they've also got the shot of, Mark's hair like being animated as he falls to the ground. It's just so well done. And even then, it still sticks mostly to the Invincible style of animation because they did point out, like, if you go too overboard, it looks like a completely different show. And yeah, that did actually kind of tick me out a little bit, but in a good way, not a bad way. Like, this CGI is trash. No, it was fantastic, and I was actually kind of stunned by it. Like, I've been standing for my entire life, and I finally sat down. But yeah, it proves that they can do these things. They have the potential to have incredibly good animation quality, and also the power scaling in the fight and everything was very consistent. we It felt like Conquest was an incredibly dangerous threat, but it also didn't feel like Mark was completely helpless here. He has grown stronger, and it is also proven true that two Viltrumites in a fight is the same thing as two guys with guns in a fight. Either one could kill the other. Granted, one could, I don't know, have a better gun, have better armor, but anything can happen. And you get some good hits on the right places, a Viltrumite will die, especially if you hit him hard enough. And we've seen plenty of this, especially in season 2 and season 3, with more Viltrumites showing up and getting fought. And we've seen that they are incredibly difficult to kill. But once you get just the right tool, the right weapon, the right person, you can kill them surprisingly quickly. So they're mortal too. It doesn't detract from their threat either. Because, like, you see, even when they lose limbs, they are still menaces. And they just keep going. And it keeps you on the edge of your seat because every single hit that is thrown matters. It is not only a permanent addition to the rest of the fight. Every time someone gets injured, it will matter for the rest of the fight. They're not just, gonna magically heal or start walking again. But they fight around it, especially in this scene. Like when Mark gets injured and he can't use a hand anymore, he uses the other hand. He starts kicking, and you see that these people have learned from their experiences in combat, and they're getting better. And it's all very immersive, but also at the same time, even though they have been injured, there could be any moment where they turn around and they kill 500 people just in a blink of an eye, because these people are dangerous. And I think that is absolutely fantastic, the way they have portrayed all of this. I know I'm kind of glazing right now, but my God, that was so good. Fantastic episode, and it was definitely a high note to end the season on. And I know, some people had some gripes with like the funeral scene. They were posed a little weirdly because of the animation. I didn't notice. Like, yeah, they were probably just copy pasted off of their model sheet, but I wasn't really paying attention because, even when things like that happen, they got some weird details in there. Usually your focus is supposed to be at a certain point on the screen. They will put all the details into that point on the screen in the hopes of keeping your focus on it. So yes, there are a lot of points in the show where if you pause and you look around, it's going to be a little weird. But they're very good at keeping those focal points going. Because I know for a fact, my attention has been pointed where they want it to go. And so overall, the show has been incredibly enjoyable for me, and I'm sure it will continue to be enjoyable for me. It'll keep getting better, and I hope that everyone else can enjoy it too. This and yeah, I still do hope that they hire more animators, put more resources into it. I don't have huge hopes for Amazon doing that because, well, screw billionaires, but man, the show deserves it. It deserves all the time and resources it can get. And these people have proven themselves to be able to do amazing things. They just need, let them cook. Let them cook. And I guess that's all I have to say. And, now that we're at the end of the video, I like to talk about some more personal things. You can go away if you don't really care about that kind of thing. But yeah, I haven't made some videos in a while. And there's nothing necessarily, stopping me from doing that, like health issues. Yes, I got sick, but that wouldn't stop me per se. It would just make my voice a little weird. Like I'm recovering right now. I have to edit a bunch of parts out of this video where I blow my nose or something. But really, it's just because of a lack of ideas. And I don't want to make, a video feel like I'm being forced to do it, feel like it's a job or a career. I want to make these videos when I want to make them. Like right now, I got an idea for this Invincible discourse. So I talked about it. And I will continue to do that. I will find things that I enjoy and I'll talk about them and things that I'm passionate about. I'm not just going to shell out videos and become a slave to the grind. And at the end of the day, this is more for fun and more being honest than it is a job. And I think that's really important, and that's where you get a lot of more heartfelt videos out. Like Jacob Geller posts like once in a blue moon, but every time he posts, it's so profound. And I have been getting more ideas to talk about lately. It's just that I like to, think about them before I post them. Who knows? Maybe there's going to be some more videos up soon. If you're interested, I know some people that did subscribe exactly for that, so service to the people. And I promise that I'm going to deliver on as much, honest quality as I can instead of just giving you slop. And I hope that the wait isn't too much. I would also like to mention that, I'm going through some financial struggles right now. Who isn't? But I'll leave my Patreon down in the description in case you want to contribute something, donate, buy me a sandwich. But you don't have to if you don't want to. To each their own. It's just going to be there as an option, and I would really appreciate if I got a little support. I know that I'm not exactly the most active, but I've already given my reasoning. I hope to, keep making videos like this, and as long as I'm able to, hopefully things don't go completely downhill, because right now, could actually lose a house. I'm being dead honest. Like, the whole family's in the rut right now because taxes are ridiculous. Like, $1,500 a single family home, and 500 of that is to a school because the administrators don't know how to manage their money and they kept taking out loans. $1 million, like it was like $20 million to refurbish a single gym floor and like put in some new clocks. I wonder where the rest of the money went. It's just things like that that are so unfair, and I have been, going to job interviews, looking for jobs, but it's tough because they don't want somebody who doesn't have experience, but how are you going to get experience without a job? And, there's things like trade school, but I don't actually have time for that because right now it's like, even for the past couple of years, it's just felt like I have to do things right now where there's going to be problems because even with cutting spending, we're at the point where we only have $2,000 left in savings, and we lose a lot more than $2,000 a month, especially because of medical bills. My parents are really old, so like they're around 60 years old, so they're getting some medical bills stacking up, especially since their insurance decides to either cover nothing or cover only a smidgen of it. Like, my dad has to go to the dentist, and it's $1,200 per tooth, and he's got more than one tooth to deal with. So that's over half of your savings gone for a tooth. And if you don't take care of it, you get an infection and you die. So either you run out of money and you end up on the street and die, or you don't fix the tooth and you die. So really cruel system we got there. And that's part of why I say as long as I'm able to make these videos, I hope I'm going to be able to. And can get some more ideas going. I just wanted to make this a full disclosure in case, I mysteriously disappear off the face of the earth. You'll know what happened. Let's just hope it doesn't come to that. And, well, the video's been dragging on long enough. Should probably attend to some other things. I got chores to do, people to help, but, well, see you in the next video if it does exist. See you whenever, and have a nice day, really.